senator, and I can't wait to hear from him this morning. I just really got it. Kendall Scudder.
Won't he be a great lieutenant governor, y'all? Because whenever I'm fighting for Senate District 2, I'm going to need somebody like Mike Collier up there running the Senate. Now, Mike's opponent isn't the only guy that won't show up in public and talk to him. I am running for the Texas Senate against Bob Hall, who lives here in Canton. And this is now the second education forum he was not able to make it to. He could throw a rock at his campaign office. He's the guy that has the signs up on the side of the road that say promises made, promises kept. But I don't remember him promising us that he was going to raise your taxes 26%. Here's my biggest problem with that, is that when Bob votes to raise your taxes, that money doesn't go to folks like us. That money goes to his donors. I grew up in Sulphur Springs, Texas, with a brassy mama that's tougher than a $2 steak. And she taught me to never walk away from a fight worth having, and I believe that our public schools are the fight worth having. So, when Senator Hall signed on to sponsor the school voucher bill, I had a problem with that.
That's right.
And when he goes down to Austin, he fights to gouge our retired teachers of their health care and their pensions. I have a real problem with that.
Yes.
And when he's pushing bathroom bills that are unfunded mandates on our public schools, and he's not fighting to make sure that rural kids have access to high-speed internet, I've got a real problem with that.
All right.
Because I believe that budgets are moral documents.
All right.
So don't tell me what your values are. You show me your budget and I'll tell you what your values are. And it is very clear that Bob's values and Dan Patrick's values aren't our values. Because where I was raised, I was taught that we look out for folks that need some help. And that every kid should have access to a quality public education. Because let me tell you a little bit about myself and why public schools are so important to me. When I was in middle school, my stepmother, who's a paramedic, was driving an ambulance with a patient in the back. And she was hit by a drunk driver and broke both her legs. And she wasn't able to work. And so I started working just about full-time when I was 14 years old at the Dairy Queen on Main Street in Sulphur Springs to help my family pay the bills. And my family would not be able to have afforded me to go to one of those fancy private schools. And so the quality public schools in Sulphur Springs are the only reason that I had any opportunity to succeed at all. And I graduated from Sulphur Springs High School, and I worked 3 jobs and took out student loans and put myself through school at St. Houston State University and became a first-generation traditional college student. And now, I'm Director of Community Services for one of the largest nonprofits in North Texas, where I put together education programs for kids that live in low-income housing communities. And I would not have had any opportunity I had in my life than to work for the public schools in Sulphur Springs, Texas. And I believe that if you get your foot through the door, you keep it wedged in there to help other people get through.
Amen.
So, I'm glad that you're on the same page there. Because what Senator Hall has been pushing in Austin is not an agenda that works for folks like us. He is very proud. Actually, the only time he ever stood up on a stage with me was at a Mesquite Education Forum. Canceled every event we had together after that. Who'd have thought that? And he bragged, and he was very proud of his support for school vouchers. I believe that school vouchers are a thinly veiled attempt to privatize our public schools and tear up our great operations. They discriminate poor kids, kids of color, kids from working families, kids with disabilities. They have no solutions for academic accountability. They have no transparency with our tax dollars. And quite frankly, they're just another entitlement program for rich folks. And you have to ask yourself why somebody like Bob Hall, who represents a community like Canton, why he would support an entitlement program for rich folks. The answer is very clear. Bob Hall has received 92% of his money from outside of our district.
There you go.
And he's received over $750,000 from one oil group out in West Texas called Empower Texas, who they don't only fight against our public schools, they fight against rational Republicans who are trying to do the right thing. And I think it's time for Democrats and rational Republicans to start working together to beat this group that's trying to tear apart our public schools. Some issues are not about what's left and what's right, or about what's right and what's wrong. And I think that's what this election's about. It's about who are we as a community? And do we find it acceptable for our politicians to be bought and sold? I actually posted about this 2 days ago. We were looking at Bob's financial disclosures, and we found that this Empower Texas group wasn't only giving him money, they were also paying to send him jet setting around the globe. And so people like you and me, unless we can afford to send Bob on a beachfront trip to Tel Aviv, he's never going to be voting the way that we need him to. He's already been paid for. And you cannot buy me, because this is my community. This is where I'm from, and this is my home. Bob moved here to run for office, so he's for sale. We're not going to agree on everything, and I think that that's good, and I think that that's healthy, and I want you to hold me accountable. The issues that we face are not red, they're not blue, they're red, white, and blue, and we've got to work together to make sure that we're fully funding our public schools in a way that's providing property tax relief for our property owners. We need to impose ethics reform in Texas. That's my number 2 issue. I want to make sure we put caps on political contributions. I want to put caps on these political action committees that are buying and selling our politicians, and we need nonpartisan redistricting committees, because it is not fair for you to have a state senator that's half representing Dallas and half representing you. Nonpartisan purple districts, I think, make for solid politicians. A scared politician is a good politician. And you get that with purple districts. And then number 3, we need to fight to make sure we're pushing for high-speed internet in rural communities. And I bring that up in education forum because it is an education issue. Yes. 85% of homework requires internet to complete it, and we're leaving our rural kids behind. Imagine starting a small business when you can't swap a credit card. I met a woman in Cooper, Texas that pays $120 a month for dial-up internet. I don't even hardly remember dial-up internet, you know? I mean, put it into perspective. I mean, it's ridiculous. We should have representatives that are fighting to bring infrastructure investments to our community, not someone who's fighting to gouge them from our community. So let me get a little bit back to public schools for just a second, because I promised Cathy that I would talk about certain issues. I promised her that I would talk to you about how much I hate standardized tests. And here's the thing. Bob will get up on a stage, if he ever is seen in public. Bob will get up on stage and he'll tell you he hates them too. But he doesn't seem to do anything about it. The guy's only passed one bill the entire time he's been in the legislature, and it didn't have anything to do with our schools. So I think that one thing that we should do to show that we mean business is to strip these STAR tests from our teachers' evaluations. And show folks that we're actually trying to make progress on that topic. $1.2 billion is how much we spent as a state on those tests since 2012. It's another example of our skewed values and where they tell you there's no money when we need it for our schools or for our hospitals, but when we need it to make sure that the testing companies that fund their campaign are able to get the money they need, suddenly they find it and they know where it's at. I think it's unconscionable. I also promised Cathy that I would talk to you about the failed A through F grading system that I staunchly opposed. There was not a teacher allowed in the room when they drafted that. Part of the problem is that we don't have enough teachers elected to public office, frankly. So if you have never run for public office, if you're an educator, I hope you will consider that in the next cycle. Particularly after we win, and if you're a Republican and you don't like everything we're doing and you're a teacher, you should run against me in 4 years, and you should hold me accountable. I would think that would be amazing. We need to have teachers holding public office in Texas, because when we have things like this A through F grading system that's developed, where not a single teacher is allowed in the room, what you get is not a metric of how well our schools are performing. What you get is a metric on how wealthy our schools are. You end up with a metric that tells you that, you know, if you are doing a wonderful job on sending your kids to college, and the next year you don't have improvement on that, you're suddenly a failing school district. I mean, it's a complete joke. But it ties in with this, the last topic that I promised Cathy I'd talk to you about, that's charter schools. Because even in their own failed A through F grading system metric for their schools, it showed that the charter schools were failing at an astronomical rate. 8% of charter schools received an F rating in this state compared to 2% of public schools. And the median average for charter schools in their own grading system was a C. They are not performing to the level of our public schools. I personally believe that there are some charter schools that have done some good work. I don't think that anyone's arguing that they haven't. But there are a couple of things that I need from charter schools before I would be willing to give them a single extra dime. And here's what they are. Number one, I believe that their teachers should be held to the same accreditation standard as our public schools. When I went to college at St. Houston State, there were people in my class with me that taught at the local charter school that didn't even have degrees. I think that they should have to be held to the same accreditation standards as our public school teachers. Second, I think that there should be transparency with our tax dollars. If your tax dollars are funding something, we should be able to know what it's funding and what it's going to. And if that charter school is paying their headmaster a $500,000 bonus every December, you should know that because you're a taxpayer. So they should be transparent with their tax dollars that we give them. And third, they should be held to the same academic standards that our public schools are. I don't like the metric system that our public schools are held to at the moment. But I believe that if our public schools are held to it, the charter schools should have to be held to it too.
Yes.
We should work to reform that system and make sure that all of our public schools are on the same playing field. The charter schools are going to walk around talking about how they're public schools. They didn't get treated like it. So that's where I'm at on charter schools. I wish that my opponent were here to tell you some of the things that he supports for our public schools. But since he's not, I will. Senator Hall wrote some bills that's going to make you throw up in your mouth and swallow. Are you ready? He wrote a bill that would have eliminated school breakfasts. Who's asking for that? Who in our community is just begging for Senator Hall to eliminate school breakfasts? No one. But his donors are. He wrote a bill that would have eliminated ESL programs in public schools, which would have effectively outsourced the job of any teacher that isn't bilingual, which is most teachers in this district. He wrote a bill that would have eliminated all mental health counselors in our schools.
No.
I mean, it's outrageous. And it's just not in line with what our values are and who we are as a community. So, he wrote a couple other bills. He was the author of a bathroom bill. He wasn't the author of the bathroom bill. He was the author of a bathroom bill that was so radical the lieutenant governor wouldn't pick it up and take it to the floor. And his bathroom bill would have eliminated all non-discrimination ordinances in the state of Texas, including housing protections for veterans. I mean, don't be surprised when I tell you he's only passed one bill. Because even his Republican colleagues will not sign up to sponsor the bills he writes. I just know we can do so much better. And it's so important to me because this is my home. So, understand that I've worked for everything that I've ever had in my life, and I don't expect your vote to be any different. And so between now and November, you're going to see me hustling all over the place the same way you have seen me hustling all over the place since last January, fighting to earn your support. And when we get to Austin, we aren't going to owe anything to anybody except for the people of Senate District 2. And we're going to be able to push the agenda that's important to us, that's important to our community. And I will not be one of those folks in the Senate that just fall in line with what Dan Patrick tells me to do, because that's not just what the Republicans do. The Democrats have done it too. Every single Senate Democrat voted in favor of Dan Patrick's budget. I will not be that guy, because I do not believe that school vouchers are the way for our communities to move forward. I do not believe that all of these special interest projects are appropriate, and I think that we should turn over a new leaf in Texas where we fight for working folks unapologetically and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to succeed. I hope that I can count on your support in November. If you're interested in helping our campaign, we got a table back there at the back that Grace is manning. sign up to help us out. Take a yard sign, put it in your neighbor's yard, put it in your yard. Make sure you get permission to do that. Because it's going to take all of us working together to make sure that we get this accomplished. So I hope that by the 9th the calendar is in November. Thank you guys so much for being here.
All right.
And thank you for your steadfast support of our public schools.